Welcome to our Marketplace Customer Office Hours. This is our monthly offering for our Marketplace customers designed to share insights, answer questions, and support our Marketplace customer community. My name is Felipe Ospina. I am a product marketing manager at Microsoft in the Marketplace team, and I am joined by my colleague, Mario Ortegon Cabrera, a principal architect at Microsoft. Mario, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Thanks a lot for the invitation, Felipe. So I am working as a principal architect at Microsoft for the last 5 years. I've been working on the mobility, travel, and transportation industries for close to 20 years. And like many people at Microsoft, for the last couple of years, I've been working a lot in AI applications. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mario. So today's topic, building, buying, or blending, how to chart your AI and app strategy with Microsoft Marketplace and how the Marketplace can support your organization as you explore AI apps and agents. So let's get started. This is the agenda for today's session. We will start with an overview of the different approaches for AI and agent adoption. We will look at some use cases in industry. We'll show you an example for a blend scenario, and then we will turn it over for Q&A. At the end of this session, the idea is for you to have a solid foundation for understanding the trade-offs between building, buying, and blending, and how to assess these trade-offs to come up with a more effective strategy where Marketplace can support your organization and support you regardless of the approach that you decide to take. So across these three approaches, there is really no one size that fits all, and each approach will serve different needs. For example, if you're thinking about building, that's where you attain maximum control of the solution, but this is something that will definitely take longer. If you are buying, you're buying out of the box, you're buying a solution that is already designed for a particular scenario. You're attaining faster deployment with proven capabilities and proven value, but you give up on customization. You'll have less customization. And then you have the blended approach, which is more balanced, where you can customize critical parts, you can balance out pricing, and we'll look a little bit more deeply into this approach. But regardless of the approach that you take, there are trade-offs that you must consider. And at a high level, you can think about three. The first one is around control. How much can you tailor that AI solution, and how much can you govern the solution, and all of the complexities that are involved in undertaking and maintaining that customization going forward. So the level of control, you have to balance that out. There's the second aspect to this, which is around speed and the time to value. For example, are you ready to jump into a trial and deploy out of the box, or are you willing to invest in development time and effort to get that solution out the door, perhaps at a lesser speed? And then there's obviously the cost. Are you thinking about development of the solution in-house versus perhaps a licensing investment where you have more predictable negotiated price so you can attain some of those financial benefits. But regardless of the approach, governance and compliance must be maintained across all cases, especially if you're, for example, in a regulated industry. So keep these factors in mind, and keeping them in mind will guide the right choice for your organization. And this is where the Marketplace can help you find that balance. The Marketplace is designed to help you find the right solution and give you that balance that you're seeking across these different components. The Marketplace acts as the single source of solutions, AI apps, and agents for you to build, buy, or blend. You can find solutions by use case, for example, solutions that are for specific industries or scenarios, and this saves you time in investigating and doing the research. And the solutions can be surfaced in the in-product experience, what we call in-product. So for example, if you're working on Azure, you're working in a product like Microsoft Foundry, that catalog of solutions will be available to you. or you can search for them in our web store storefront for Microsoft Marketplace. It'll help you accelerate from concept to production and accelerate that time to value. And it will save you on those time-consuming steps where you have to onboard vendors. It accelerates the time, and it helps with that heavy lifting with pre-approved solutions that are already vetted by Microsoft. So you save time on the procurement process, the vendor onboarding, the approvals. All that is pretty much done for you if you search for the solution and find it through the marketplace. And it gives you the governance and control that your organization requires, because security in the marketplace is aligned to Azure. So you'll have role-based access controls that you may already be using in your Azure environment, for example. So everything is aligned to those controls to give you more peace of mind on the governance, control, and security side. So now let's consider the build scenario. Let's look deeper at the build scenario. In this scenario, the goals that you want to attain are maximum control. You may have unique differentiation because you have a highly specific use case. You want to implement your own IP. It's internal proprietary, and you want to align those AI apps and agents to a specific business outcome. But in this scenario, the trade-off is definitely speed, right? Speed and development costs, because you may need specialized skills with the people to help you build this, and there may be higher upfront costs for you if you go down the build path. Now, the marketplace in this scenario will help you because it'll help ground those AI solutions that you're building with thousands of models that provide fast and relevant context. And you can build using pre-trained models, whether you're on Azure or through, for example, Microsoft Foundry. So it gives you that flexibility. Now, let's consider in the build scenario, and let's take a look a little bit more deeper at cost drivers, starting with a simplified view of some of the architectural trade-offs that you may encounter. And this is an example if you're building an agent, for example. You have cost drivers that include maybe volume of data. How much data is that agent going to need to be successful? So that's one of the things that you'll need to think about. You will think about how chatty, quote unquote, that agent is going to be. And does it need additional guidance, perhaps, or will it take a single input before returning a result set? So there's several aspects to consider around the agent. For an optimization strategy, let me walk you through the example that you see here on the chart on the upper right. So let's say that the job of your agent is to process documents. So for example, you're processing large numbers of invoices, RFPs, RFIs for a department in your organization. So you can see, for example, the green line shows the cost and the volume if that agent is built using the Azure App Service. And then the red line represents the agent built using Azure Kubernetes Service. So you can see that at low volume, the cost is very different. But as the volume of documents processed increases, the Kubernetes curve will plateau. The top curve in red is going to start to plateau, and those lines are going to start moving closer together. So as the number of documents continues to increase, this gap will continue to close further. So the takeaway here is to consider those costs and those balancing out those costs for the model that you're implementing. Okay. Now, let's think about another cost driver. For example, model selection. So as the brain of your agent, it's very important when you're choosing the right model and choosing it for critical performance and cost of your solution. An example, a tool that you can use is the Microsoft Foundry Model Leaderboard. And this tool is very powerful to help you guide this decision. This tool will help you map how reliable or how high quality the response of a specific model is against the cost. So you can compare multiple models and choose what's best for your solution. So you see this example here on the right. You can see that the Grok 4 model, the fast reasoning model, is the only option in the green, meaning that it sits on the most attractive quadrant with close to 90% accuracy. So that gives you the capability to assess the model that you want to use, and then this is the path that you may pursue with a specific model for your solution. Now let's look a little bit deeper at the buy scenario. In the buy scenario, this is a use case where you want to buy out of the box. You want to buy that AI solution where you are looking for proven value, proven capabilities, and you want to realize that value immediately without that lengthy development cycle. You're seeking predictable costs, perhaps via licensing or via a subscription model for that solution. And here the trade-off is control. You are relying on the vendor for updates or customization of the solution. So that's the trade-off from buying that solution out of the box. But Marketplace in this scenario will support you because it will help you accelerate the time to value. It will reduce the vendor onboarding and reduce that procurement time. And perhaps you are also seeking to negotiate custom terms and conditions. You can do that through a private offer in the Marketplace. And those private offers can also count to your Azure cloud consumption commitment. So what you purchase through the Marketplace will count towards those commitments. And in addition to the financial benefits, you will also be able to govern and control those pre-approved solutions, the solutions that you buy through the Marketplace, with functionality such as a private marketplace. So it gives you the capabilities to control what your what the people within your tenant, within your organization are doing. And you'll find in the Marketplace solutions that integrate with the Microsoft stack. They integrate with different products. You can look for those capabilities out of the box. Or if you're interested in purchasing the solution through your channel partner, that's also an option that you can do through the Marketplace in the buy scenario. And if you're buying or building seeking those AI apps agent solutions, that Marketplace is that trusted source to find those solutions with over 11,000 models ready to deploy. It'll help you bridge that gap between model access and performance at scale for all of those tools and connectors in one single place. And you'll find in the Marketplace catalog the top AI solution providers, solutions from those top providers without slowing down compliance or procurement for your organization. You will find pre-integrated stacks, compatible component architectures, or shared data models and schemas and solution templates for common patterns. And all of these are vetted solutions from Microsoft partners that are certified to run on Azure. And as I said earlier, the Marketplace, you can think about it as one catalog. It's a single unified catalog for those solutions that are accessible and available where you work, whether you're in the web, searching for them in the Marketplace storefront, or you're in the Azure portal. You can deploy solutions directly while building in Azure, or working in Microsoft Foundry. You'll have integrated access within Foundry and the workflows within that product. Or Microsoft 365. You will access the catalog of 365 within Microsoft 365 for AI apps and applications, for productivity experiences. So no matter where you're working, you access that same trusted Marketplace catalog that will help you meet your needs. Let's look at it now in more detail at the blend approach. So you can think about the blend approach as a hybrid approach, and this can be the best approach for some use cases. For example, you want to extend your use case with your IP to a partner solution. So you want your IP, you want to extend it to a partner solution, or perhaps you're interested in a partner-led deployment. And through the Marketplace, you can access through your partner services like an assessment, a briefing. You need an implementation or a proof of concept. You want support services for that solution. For your blend approach, you can do that through the Marketplace. So you can get inspired, and as you find those solutions, regardless of the scenario, you don't need to fret about losing financial and operational control because it is all through the marketplace with the governance and control capabilities that your organization requires. So let's walk through some high-level use cases of how AI architects use marketplace with customers. For example, across rapid prototyping with pre-built AI apps, you can spin up industry copilots and AI apps in minutes and validate that return on investment before committing to engineering investments. So for example, if you're in the financial services industry, you can cut 3-month proof of concepts down to just weeks using a marketplace copilot or a copilot found in marketplace. You can blend custom logic with marketplace components if you're combining those marketplace models and agents with custom workflows to keep differentiation where it matters for you. For example, if you're a manufacturer, you can use marketplace to find predictive agents to use your own IoT data. Thirdly, governance and control through private marketplace. This is where you can approve only compliant, secure solutions within your organization to simplify procurement and eliminate vendor risk. For example, a healthcare, if you're in the healthcare industry, you need systems that standardize AI procurement through a private marketplace so you can authorize only those solutions that your organization requires. You can scale AI with a trusted vendor ecosystem, fill those capability gaps with vetted components. Everything for it runs in the customer's tenant. For example, if you're a retailer, you can add a marketplace LLM APIs to augment existing copilots, or you can accelerate copilot studio builds using pre-built connectors, models, and tools, and reduce development life cycles and integration friction. So let's look now in this next section at some examples across a couple of industries. So for example, financial services. If you are a financial institution, you do not want to rebuild for fraud or AML detection from scratch. You don't want to rebuild everything. So with Marketplace, you can deploy pre-built fraud models and compliance APIs within minutes, and everything just runs inside the tenant or the Azure tenant using managed identity. So there's no secrets ever that move around. And once deployed via Marketplace, your teams can test new fraud models or scenarios without reopening compliance reviews every single time. So this is purely an example of blending in action where you buy the model, you build your workflows and scale with Azure's governance and cost controls. An example in financial services. If you're in manufacturing, for example, so here's the story in manufacturing today. Nobody really wants to rebuild predictive maintenance models from scratch. They want something that works with the machines they already have on the factory floor, right? And with Marketplace, you can literally grab an IoT telemetry agent or a partner model, for example, from Siemens, from ABB, PTC, whoever you trust, and drop it straight onto Azure Edge. And because it deploys with managed identity, there's no messing around with secrets or custom pipelines. It's just running inside your environment. And once it's on the edge, it's talking directly to the factory equipment and to those production systems. So the nice part here is everything is still governed and cost controlled from one place in Azure. So ops teams stay fully in control of the experience. And the value is simple. Manufacturers can blend their own telemetry with proven industry models and start reducing that downtime immediately without months of engineering work. And this is what I mean when I talk about blend. You bring in your signals from manufacturing, you bring in a model, you run it at the edge, and you get results without rebuilding the entire predictive maintenance stack. If you're in the healthcare space, we know healthcare is one of the toughest spaces for AI because everything needs to be, for example, HIPAA compliant. There's a lot of regulations around the data can't leave, residency boundaries, and clinicians don't have time for tech that slows them down. And if you're in the healthcare space, what Marketplace gives you for healthcare is accelerated time to value. You can deploy those HIPAA compliant clinical agents straight into their own environment. And you can blend, for example, Azure OpenAI with third-party medical NLP models, which is usually something that would take months of integration work in the healthcare industry. And once it's deployed, that solution will connect directly to your health record systems, all inside the boundary, all governed by your own data residency policies. And the impact here is immediate. As a provider, you're spending less time on administration and patients getting records or summaries a lot faster. And nobody in the healthcare industry wants to build a whole new clinical AI stack from scratch. You just want to deploy a compliant solution from Marketplace combined with the models you trust and keep everything governed in one single place. So this is the healthcare version of Blend. You take best-in-class clinical NLP, you keep everything compliant, and you reduce friction for both the provider and you can reduce friction for both as a provider and also for your patients. So to close this first part, I want to bring in some concepts when you're thinking about those strategies on how this all ties into a governed and responsible framework for AI and AI agents and AI solutions. So number one, think about how this is responsible by design. So what does this mean? It means that governance is built into how those AI components are approved, how those AI components are deployed, and how they're monitored. Secondly, faster time to value. With pre-approved marketplace assets, you can accelerate the building and you can reduce friction internally and gain faster time to value for those solutions. You attain predictable and controllable spend. With Azure native cost and operational controls, you can ensure that AI doesn't just run wild from a cost perspective. And it's also important to have measurable business impact, where every agent, every model or application is aligned to deliver a KPI linked outcome. So it's about creating this governed approach where you can really bring all these characteristics. And now I'll hand it over to Mario to walk us through an example and this decision model.
Sure.
Mario?
Thanks, Felipe. So we have talked a lot about buy, blend, or build, which is these three ways that we can take to create these AI applications. So the important thing is which one of these ways we take. And so I created a small diagram that expresses the high-level decision process that you can take in order to take the right solution. First of all, you may have had the decision taken for you if you have a specific governance or regulatory requirements, which are always gating factors. That's okay. In this case, you may need to either buy or blend specific things. That's okay. But first, let's imagine that you start in this decision process, you start in this journey. So the first thing that you have to understand is what I want to build a core business capability, or does it create a unique business value for my company? If that is the case, if that's not the case, well, then just buy something, because it makes no sense to reinvent the wheel. So that's clear. If it's not differentiated, don't do it. If it's core or it's uniquely valuable, then the next check is, do you have enough developers to do this? Do you have the developer capacity? If you don't have the developer capacity, then maybe you should think about blending and combine marketplace or partner solutions with your own logic so you can move quickly and reduce the costs. Okay, you have the capacity to develop the solution in the first place, but then you also have to think about the total cost of ownership, because the solution is out there, you need to maintain it, you need to extend it. So if it's not possible to have with your team to maintain the complete application, then blending is again a very pragmatic solution. So if it delivers unique value, if you have the development capacity, and if the TCO makes sense, then go ahead and build a custom solution. So let's look at an example of blend in practice. And I took this example for two reasons. Number one is I like to eat, and number two is 3D printers is a hobby of mine. you may know that there is 3D printers that can print food nowadays. So imagine that you decide to make a cake business, and the idea of this cake business and the unique value proposition is that you can create custom cakes with whatever design the customers want, taking advantage of these new technologies. So in this case, your unique value proposition is not creating models, the thing that Philippe mentioned, but delivering the cake as fast as possible at a very good price. So in this case, going blend makes sense because you can create a e-commerce solution on the web that allows the customer to order their cake and customize it. And you can use models to do two very important things. So in this example, let's say that in my case, I like riding bikes. And when I got married, I wanted to have a special decoration on top of my cake, which is me and my wife riding bikes. So as part of the design process in this e-commerce application, I can either upload a picture or create a prompt like the one that you can see on the screen. So create wedding cake topper figurines. And then you can use two models. First, one to create very quickly and cheaply a picture of what the wedding topper is going to look like. And then there's a second model available, generative AI models, that are able to create 3D images based, 3D models based on the image. So once you have that, then you can have your automatic process that will start to print those decorations for your cake. So you are creating here a business model where generative AI is part of it, but it's actually not a chatbot that the user is interacting with. It's part of your e-commerce concept. And why are you doing that? Because you have very improved KPIs, which are time to design and cost to design. Those two things you want to bring down because your value proposition is to deliver the cakes as quickly as possible. Okay, so this is blend in practice. So what does it mean for deployment? So let's look at an example. So if you look in Foundry, you may see that there is a model catalog and there's a lot of models. And I took an example from NVIDIA, which is a Trellis model. And the Microsoft Trellis model is an asset generation model. You can deploy this model, so you can decide, you can create a virtual machine of a specific size with a specific cost, and you can deploy this model into your subscription. And it will create an endpoint that you can easily blend with an e-commerce platform in order to generate these 3D models. So you can see here, when I press on deploy, it takes a while, but it's going to create this model at this virtual machine, and you can see that all of the pricing information is available to you. So in the case of this model, the first 90 days are a free trial, so you can do the development and see that it works with you. Very important, the marketplace allows partners also to offer this kind of free trials. And then you have a lot of transparency related to how much does it cost to run this model as part of your business. So as Philippe mentioned earlier, you can discover these models in Azure or Microsoft Foundry, and we can see how we use the model catalog to access the model and deploy it. And with this, I will hand over back to Felipe to do Q&A.
Great, thank you, Mario. This is a great example because basically to recap, what you just showed us here is accessing a model from the marketplace catalog in Foundry. So it's available there directly in Microsoft Foundry, or you could also access this same experience, this catalog through Azure. So it really meets you where you are and where you're actually building the solution in your work environment. So great example. Thank you so much. Okay, let's shift over now for some questions. Let's see, we have a couple of questions that were submitted. Are LLMs Azure benefit eligible? That's a great question. So let me just explain the concept of Azure benefit eligible. In the marketplace, we have solutions that are Azure benefit eligible. And these solutions, when you purchase them and you have a Microsoft Azure consumption commitment, this means that those solutions will count towards your commitment. So in the case of an LLM model, if the solution is tagged as such, the answer is yes, it will be Azure benefit eligible. And this is not just for LLMs. For example, if you're looking for a SaaS application those can also be Azure benefit eligible for the organization. So that's another way to get value from the marketplace if you're looking to purchase solutions that will count to your commitment. How do you actually buy the solution? Okay, so usually you will have, as an Azure customer, you will have a Microsoft agreement. It could be an EA, it could be an MCA agreement with Microsoft, or you could use a credit card if you actually want to just do a proof of concept, a quick deployment. You can use your credit card for that for a trial, and you don't necessarily have to have a Microsoft commercial agreement. You can also do it through a partner. As I mentioned earlier, you can buy through your preferred partner if you already have a channel relationship, for example, and you want that solution and purchase it through the channel partner. You can do that. Okay, we have another question. In the blend scenario, how is integration between custom logic and marketplace models typically achieved? Mario, do you want to maybe take that one?
Yes, normally when you deploy a model, you get an endpoint, which is an API that you can call in order to integrate it with your solution. So depends on how you build your solution. There are 2 or 3 ways. You can use declarative agents, you can use things like agent framework, etc., etc., etc. But usually, when you are building your solution, you can use the endpoint in order to call the model and send a request and receive a response. And the response can be a chat one. So you send the message from the user and you get an answer from the model. Or in the case that I show about this blended scenario, your application has to control the flow and send the specific request and get the 3D model and show it through a viewer. But at the end of the day, it's always just an API call.
Okay, great. Another question, any thoughts on instrumenting agents efficiently? This is a very interesting question because what I would say around this is go beyond usage, right? Not look just at usage, because instrumentation is where you really want those task outcomes and risk controls. It's adding metrics and adding logging hooks, for example, into the agent's workflow so you can observe and you can quantify that performance, quantify that usage, and also the compliance, right? Because you want accuracy on the solution, you want a specific resolution and containment rate, and you want adoption. You want to understand how many weekly active users you may have. You may have repeat usage patterns that you want to be able to measure. And on the efficiency and cost side, you're thinking about compute tokens per successful outcome and cost per tasks. So you want to make sure that you're able to instrument that around, as we mentioned earlier, governance and any policy violations that you can prevent, and also for audit completeness if you need audit capabilities. So you got to think about it holistically. And one of the ways to do this is you can define success criteria for each agent. So for example, a criteria for an agent, if you're in customer service, you have an agent in that space resolving a support case, you can have the criteria of this agent generated a report, it summarized notes. It's important to define that success criteria for each of the tasks that the agents are doing. And you want to ensure that you're capturing measurable outputs. You want to make sure that those outputs, for example, the completion rate. Did your agent finish the task? Is there accuracy or a quality score that you can implement around that completion? Was the output correct or useful? Did it save time on the cycle? How much faster versus manual process? So that also will be very important. And finally, the containment and the deflection, for example, the number of cases resolved without resorting to an escalation. How much could that agent contain by itself? And within this context, it's also very important to log the context, right? Which model did this, which is the prompt, and which data source, So you can then trace performance back to that specific configuration if you need to do so. And make sure that you have audit trails as well to understand who invoked the agent, what actions were taken, and what was returned. So all along the process where you're instrumenting all of these steps will be critical to understand those metrics, because you can't prove that our ROI if you don't build that from the start, and you may have to redesign the entire solution if you don't think this through. Okay, so those are some tips. We have another question. How do you measure the business impact and the technical success in blend in production? Like, how do you measure the business impact and technical success in the blended scenario in production? Mario, do you want to maybe answer that one? Any thoughts there?
It goes a little bit to what you mentioned already, Felipe, is at the end of the day, you have to track both business and technical KPIs from the very beginning. So in the business case, you have to define metrics that make sense for your specific use case. So in the example that I gave, in the cake business example, you are measuring two KPIs, which is how long it takes you to make the design and to print it. So the time to do cake decoration, if you will. So that's the business side. On the technical side, you do want to capture these task outcomes: completion rate, accuracy, cycle time, etc. Adoption, so how many users, repeated usage, etc. And efficiency, also very important. In the case of the cake business, how many tokens do I require to create a successful design? How many times the users are trying to retry because they didn't get something that they liked? So things that improve the efficiency of the system with time.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just one comment. Governance, super important. Policy compliance and audit traits for sure. Maybe for the cake business, not so much of a topic, except the topic of personal identifiable information, but still extremely important for the business.
Great. So Mario, in your experience, when you've come across these type of scenarios, could you talk about maybe some of the challenges in operationalizing a blended solution, and perhaps how do you think about mitigating those challenges? Any thoughts there?
Sure. Usually when you have a blended solution, the main problem is that you have a heterogeneous components of custom logic, things that come from partners, etc. So ensuring these consistent deployment strategies, consistent monitoring and instrumentation, managing updates, that tends to be super hard. And that's one of the advantages of the marketplace, because in the marketplace, many of these topics are already taken care of, like updates, for example. And if you combine it with solutions like Foundry, things like control plane, monitoring, and instrumentation are also taken care of. So in a nutshell, using standardized APIs, having this unified instrumentation through the Azure components like Microsoft Foundry, having a clear update and rollback procedures, which is something that the marketplace assets give you, and all of these governance features that we already have in our products, they go a long way towards addressing many of these issues.
Great. Thank you, Mario. That was the last question that we had. So we're coming up at time. I just wanted to use this opportunity to incentivize and incent you to take action with the marketplace. In the marketplace, you can find those solutions to help you innovate faster. You can get started in this link that we have. You can watch demos, find case studies, and access marketplace documentation that will help you understand more about the Microsoft Marketplace and the journey. And also, do not forget to join the marketplace community as well, which has a great set of resources available for you through this community. So please, if you haven't joined, please join us in the marketplace community. And thank you very much for attending this session, and we'll see you next time.